Welcome to One of the Trenches podcast. My name is Johnny Jones. This is Patches Kaplan. We're back again. We're going to talk some Halloween college football week picks. Where do you want to start, Patch?
So, Johnny, we'll start with our records.
Yes,
It
like
is known
always.
that you and I both swung and missed on our Cheesecake Factory picks of the week.
Yep.
Went for the fences and kind of the kill shot with Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Good game. They didn't have it in them. I thought I had it. I thought I was going to get 3 easy points from Michigan State. Another swing and miss. I haven't hit in, I think, 5 weeks. It's a tough one. You are winning 15-11 on that one.
Yeah, still
Going
close.
to our pick against the spreads. So remember, when you pick against the spread, Johnny, the DraftKings, the sportsbook takes a vig of 10%, right? So you bet 10, you win 9 on the spreads.
Of course.
So you're 32 for 64. And the reason I want to say that is it sounds like you're 50%, but technically you would still be down. If you bet, 1 unit on each of those games, you'd be down 1 unit.
Yeah, what do they say? You got to hit like 52% in order to make money. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so I'm doing a little bit better. I'm 6 games ahead of you. I'm 38 for 64. So technically I'm profitable on the year. It is pretty crazy though, like how close you and I are to 50%. Like that is the goal of the sports books, is they want 50% of people to bet on one side, 50% to bet on the other, because they take that minus 10 part of the minus 110.
Yeah.
And the closer you are to 50%, the more money that they make.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And as the weeks go on, you and I are just literally flirting with that line. And I would say we're better than most.
No, I'm so hot and cold. Like I started hot at the beginning of the season. I went through such a slump, and now the last 2 weeks I've kind of been trending in the right direction. But it's crazy.
You know what they say? You're just one bet away from striking it rich. Don't give up now. So, Johnny, a couple things that I want to talk about today is I would like, a lot of our fans have reached out to me and they talked to me about where our AP Foley's went. And to be honest, I completely forgot about it. And I would like to bring it back.
It was a good segment.
I would like for you to talk about a few teams that you think are way too low ranked in the AP poll.
Okay.
And then please talk about a few teams that are way too high ranked.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, I like how you did that because it's definitely easy to pick teams that are way too low. And I started kind of grouping these in based on like who they're below and stuff like that. And where I want to start is
I'm sorry, I gotta get this out there. When you're talking about teams, Johnny, being way too low ranked or high ranked, what's going into making your decision?
I kind of look to see like marquee teams on the list. Like should like I don't know. For example, like I'll pick like Bama. Like we know where they are. They have 2 losses right now. Like they're kind of like my like guiding stone, and they'll be like I'll look at the teams above and teams below and like, well, should these teams be above them or should these teams be below them? So like I'll start doing like that, and then I kind of get rolling. So
Gotcha.
like for example, teams that stuck out to me that were way too low: BYU, Indiana, and Iowa State.
Yeah.
I think those teams, if you look at Indiana, well, first of all those teams are undefeated. So that's like my first grouping. Undefeated teams I don't think are getting enough respect. And even like Vegas, every single week disrespecting BYU. They've been plus money a lot of this season, which I think
they're only like +4 against Houston this week.
No, I know. I mean, they were big time plus money against UCF, which I thought was like outrageous. But like, so that was my first grouping. Undefeated teams not getting enough respect. And I know you love them, but BYU behind Notre Dame, I think right now is crazy. They demolished.
It makes no sense because if you slap that 8-0 record on Kansas State, if you slap that 8-0 record on Colorado, Utah, they're a top 7 team.
No, 100%. I think BYU, Indiana, and like Iowa State are getting disrespected because of the logo on their helmet. Like they're just like not big brands, but like you look at BYU and Iowa State, and you can say what you want about the Big 12. And we were kind of talking before the podcast about how the Big 12 might not have elite top-end talent, but they're solid across the board. Like they've got teams that play solid football.
Yeah.
And that being said, BYU and Iowa State are both sitting at undefeated right now. And I don't think they're getting enough respect. And then Indiana is I know they haven't had a strong strength of schedule, but they're straight up demolishing teams.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're below Texas A&M and Clemson, I think is crazy. I know Clemson and A&M are both playing really good football right now, but Clemson kind of got embarrassed week 1 to Georgia, who,
the strength of schedule thing is an interesting point, Johnny, because who has Miami beat?
No one. Like absolutely. And they almost lost they almost lose every week.
They are ranked, I'm looking at it now, they're ranked 5. But Indiana has beat teams on the road, such as Maryland. They beat Nebraska at home in an absolute stomping.
Yeah.
They beat Washington. They've beaten a lot of really good teams, yet they're 13 just because they're Indiana. And I get what they're saying, but to say that those teams are the same caliber as Virginia Tech, FSU, BC, like the teams that Miami are beating, it is insulting to the Big Ten.
100%. And another team I thought was too low was Pitt. Like, when are we going to start respecting Pitt a little more? I think they're at what, 18 this week?
18 right now. They only jumped a single spot after beating Syracuse.
And Syracuse was a team that we talk about a little bit that was playing really good football. I know you can say that maybe Kyle McCord did a better job of beating Syracuse than Pitt did, but at the end of the day, it's like they still won that game. And they're still undefeated. And I know they had that scare against Cal, but that was a weird game where they were kind of in control from like 3 quarters, and they kind of got the foot off the gas in the fourth. But that being said, they've won every game they've played, and I think Pitt at 18 is pretty disrespectful. Those are the ones that right away jumped out at me for teams that are too low. What do you have to say about that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. The one that, that is too low, and the reason I'm saying it's too low, they're not on the list, is Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that is that you have Texas, who's now ranked 6th. They dropped a spot after a tough game against Vandy. They drop a spot because they had a tough game against Vandy. But the team that played the tough game is now not moving up in the poll.
No,
like, it's just insulting to have Mizzou there and Vandy not. To have Washington State maybe deserves it, probably shouldn't be there. Colorado, I don't believe should be there. Vanderbilt should be there. I think that's just straight disrespectful. And it just does not make sense of the 8 people to drop teams for winning a game, but not increase teams for coming very close to winning the game, like in that case.
It's just so tough because you take that Georgia State loss and like Vanderbilt's going to go back and they're just going to be kicking themselves all year for that loss, because you take that loss out, beat Kentucky, beat Bama, close losses to Texas and Mizzou. Like, they're playing just fantastic football up front.
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, teams that are too low, my opinion on head-to-head matchups in week 1. I love them for entertainment. I do not think that they should come into play 8 to 10 weeks down the line for so many different reasons. And a lot of it is because of the double-edged sword, right? You have a team that hypothetically goes down for an injury. Everyone acknowledges that injury of their quarterback. Therefore, their head-to-head matchups are completely null and void. We saw that straight up with FSU last year.
Yep.
Right? Their quarterback, Jordan Travis, gets hurt. Everything's null and void. They suck. They're no longer good. But for teams that still remain in the midst of the playoff race, in the national championship race, such as Notre Dame and Texas A&M, the AP poll will never, ever put A&M above Texas as long as things play out the season as they should. But you're not telling me, and I know Notre Dame's playing good football, what A&M did to LSU the other day was embarrassing to Brian Kelly in Baton Rouge.
It was bad.
It was so bad. That second half was genuinely such good football by those Aggies and such bad football by those Tigers. And they're only 10 because Notre Dame has to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, they would be higher. They should be higher than Tennessee. I think they should be higher than – they're going to be higher than Texas in a couple weeks. But they're not because of that Notre Dame loss. They have to keep them in relation to Notre Dame. They're always going to keep them, like, just slightly below.
Yeah, it's almost like they forget that teams can improve during the season. And what kind of struck me as crazy, not like I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but about that LSU Texas A&M game is like you see them switch from Wegman to Marcel Reed in that second half, and Marcel Reed with a read option, and they really, really that offense accelerated and they took off. But the craziest thing was Wegman was hurt for a lot of the season. So, like, Marcel Reed had a lot of plays on tape. And for Brian Kelly and LSU to be so shocked by that was crazy. It's like, we're not going to – I don't know. Like he was on tape. They started games with Reed. They won games with Reed. So, for him to come in and it looked like, I don't know, LSU was like seeing an alien play quarterback. You know what I mean?
They had no idea. I've never understood how elite college coaches can't defend the option type plays. Like, the running quarterback is what I was trying to say. Like, it's not new football. It's fundamental football, right? You have one player on an option play, one player is designated to the quarterback, one is a running back. Stick to
Yeah.
your plays and you know what you're doing. A read option is very effective when you have two really good runners, but at the college level, you should be able to perform. LSU did nothing but disappoint in that game. A lot of unanswered points. I thought A&M played with their hair on fire, kind of ignited something under their own butt that, I haven't seen. I'm riding that Aggie train. I think Mike Elko's got the boys buzzing, and excuse me. I think that LSU dropping to 16 is appropriate. It's not a team. I don't know how I want to say this. It's not a team I would ever look forward to betting for. It's not a team that I would ever look for on TV. LSU does nothing for me. Garrett Nussmeier played so bad in the second half that he eliminated himself from the Heisman contention.
Yeah, that was really surprising because I've been really high on Nussmeier all season. That was tough.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's a few teams on here that are exclusively getting a little bit of bias still from their preseason rankings, such as Ole Miss. I don't think anyone and their mothers actually thinks Ole Miss is that good of a team.
So yeah,
they're going to drop another one to Georgia and be completely eliminated from the playoff contention.
So to talk about teams too high, so I also had Ole Miss at 19.
Oh, excuse me, I already bridged that. Yes, I think that Ole Miss is much too high.
19.
I think that I didn't get all my too lows out, but I'm going to circle back. I think Ole Miss is much too high. I think they should be probably mid-20s. They're going to drop out of playoff contention. I'm going to love seeing the SEC only get 3 teams in this year. I don't think they get 4. I think that they kind of eat themselves up. I got to ride that Indiana trade. I think that putting them at 13 is very, very insulting. And I think the double 11s, right? Clemson, Iowa, and then Indiana is just – it's tough because I think they're better teams, but I don't think they truly have the resume to put them any higher.
No, I agree because the way we rank teams, like you can think one team's better, but I think at the end of the day, you also have to look at the resume and be like, hey, what has this team showed me? Because at the end of the day, what a team has shown is who they are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like when you're picking those playoff spots, it's like you can't imagine this team being better than they are. Like you got to be like, hey, what have they shown
Josh
me?
Pete was talking about it, Johnny, the other day about the old school saying of you are what your record is. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I think that sometimes there's teams like last year's Nebraska who lost from like an average of 3 points per game.
Yeah.
It's not reflective. And I don't know if you remember it, 2021 or 2022, Nebraska went 3-9. You got to look it up. I'm not going to do it justice. They basically, on average, lost by 3 points or less. If you eliminate the turnovers that Nebraska had in those games, it was like turnovers, missed referee calls, and special teams plays. They should have realistically went 10-2, and it would have saved Scott Frost's job. But look it up. There's some really cool articles on it about how close they were to having a 10-2 season, yet they finished 3-9.
It's a lot worse team this year, but it's kind of like Cal. Cal's not a good team, but they're like addicted to losing close games. Like they lose by like a touchdown or less every single week. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's tough. So I have Clemson, Indiana, both teams that I haven't watched enough Iowa State football to put them any higher. I think Clemson's the real deal. I think that truly they beat Miami by 2 touchdowns when they meet in the ACC championship. I don't think that game's nearly as close. I think that they beat my hot take is they beat Miami so bad in the ACC championship that people talk about leaving Miami out as a 1-loss team.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a really fun game because it's going to come down to Clemson's defense. If they can kind of contain Cam Ward, Clemson wins this game, I think, by like 10 points. If it's like under 35 points, but if they're going over 35, man, Cam Ward, if Clemson just can't make it a shootout.
Like hypothetically, not to go on a tangent here, like if Clemson wins 35-7 in that game, like is Miami out of the playoff?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends. Like, how's Boise looking? Is Army still in the mix? I think it comes down to like I think it's so hard to predict the play. I know we did like last episode or two, but it's so hard to predict these playoff situations
because with the 12-team playoff, Johnny, you have to incorporate losses. You have to say to yourself, all right, let's say Army runs the table, loses to Notre Dame by a touchdown. Right? Yeah. Let's say it's 37-30 or 35-28. Clemson then breaks off Miami, beats them 42-14, 42-20, something on those lines. You got to say, was Army's loss to Notre Dame, a 1-possession game, a better loss than Miami's? Yeah, Miami technically had a harder schedule. And then you go and start comparing losses, and then that's a dangerous slope
It's a
to go down.
slippery. The transitive, like I hate when people say that. I do it myself, but the transitive property doesn't always work in college football because
No,
you can get just kind of stuck in this scrappy
no.
game where like you're underperforming, and then now you're like multiple teams doing that and trying to
Yeah,
compare.
people don't understand that. These are still human beings that they're in college. They could have had a bad week. They could have failed
Yeah,
their test,
yeah,
or in my case, gotten a 36 on a calculus 2 test and just not brought their A game. I don't know. It could have been a bunch of things, but I agree with you. I don't think that that's a good way to evaluate. When I'm evaluating the AP poll, I'm a firm believer of you take team A and team B, whatever they're ranked, 10 and 11,
yeah,
who's winning? Okay, then I take 9 and 10, who's winning? Or
yeah.
what would Vegas put the line at? Hypothetical line. And that's kind of how I like to make mine. And that's why I don't have much change in the top 4.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I
And that's why I think the top 10 is very, very hard to evaluate. But, teams that are much, much too high. We
yeah,
talked about Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. I like
Mizzou should not be on this list.
no,
They should not be
Mizzou's
on this list.
bad right now, like
Very,
so.
very bad. They
If
don't
they
they
lose,
don't know what they're doing.
if they lose that overtime game to Vanderbilt, they're not even ranked anymore. I
Yeah,
also think Bama's too high. 14
that was
for
my next one.
two-loss team.
Two lost team. What's crazy is they're heading to Death Valley, I believe, in 2 weeks, November 9th.
That's gonna be a good game.
Going to be a really, really good game. It's going to be like kind of a garbage bowl. I bet it's very gritty, very penalty filled.
I don't know. Wait, it might not be a good game because freaking LSU looked like they could not defend the read option. And if you can't defend the read option, you're gonna have a bad day against Bama. I know
I've
they
said that for so long that like Jalen Milroe's just like one play away from breaking it loose, and like what they played like in Georgia, I was like blown away. I was like, this team is legit. Kalen DeBoer knows how to win. Blah blah blah. And I did the same facade as everyone else did. Like Kalen DeBoer never loses. He never loses. It's like he's never really played SEC football.
no.
Right, like if this is any indication of what he's going to be like at Alabama, it's going to be a long time there because he's already lost 2 games with one of the best talent rosters that he's probably ever had. On top of that, a very down year out of the SEC.
Yeah.
Like that Tennessee team is not really that special. Once again, I don't know where or how to put them in the top 25 in the AP poll. I don't mind 7. I don't. In reality, I think they probably should be closer to 12. I don't know. I think that they should be lower than Clemson. If they were playing in the Peach Bowl, for instance, neutral field, whatever it may be, I think Clemson beats them. I think BYU beats them. I think that A&M, Notre Dame, all Indiana,
It just
all these teams beat them.
They're such a tough team to really critique because they've got a top end defense and a very, very middle of the pack offense. So it's like, if they only played one side of the ball, they could be a top 4 team, but they got to play both sides. And that,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, just like Nico, he's just such a freshman at this point. Like, he's going to be really good. And he shows these drives and these flashes where he puts it together. And then he shows like just kind of like these brain farts, like the end of their loss, we just ran out of bounds. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just a hard to evaluate because of just the difference in talent between their offense and defense, which we're really not used to seeing out of Tennessee. The past couple of years, they've been freaking all offense, and now
it's interesting where they've gone, and I think that's Josh Heupel's way of kind of maturing as a coach. And he'll eventually get that offensive production that he's looking for with a stout defense, and they're going to be a true top 3 team in the nation. But this year ain't it. Johnny, I want to quickly kind of move on to our Halloween segment.
Yes, Halloween.
Teams that you would be scared to play in the playoffs. Let's say hypothetically, right? We're both Oregon. You are at the selection show. It's a pizza party. You got some soda. It's a whole lot of fun. Your name gets pulled against blank.
Okay.
Who does your stomach drop against?
Okay. So I think very categorically. So I did 3 categories of like why these teams are scary. First category is if you're an away team, you gotta travel. And I think the 3 teams I don't want to play at home in that first round are.
All right, you're going to this stadium, correct?
You're going to the stadium. So it's Penn State, Texas A&M, and Clemson. Because I think all 3 of these teams are similar in certain ways. I think all 3 have very good defenses. Up front, all 3 of these teams are vicious. I've said it all season. Clemson, Penn State, I think has two of the best defenses, and A&M's freaking front four is vicious. I think going into those stadiums and having to play against those defenses would make me sick. Like I think
Would you be more concerned going into those types of defenses within a tough environment, or if those teams hypothetically had an even better offense?
I think defense. Defense just because when you're on offense in those stadiums, like Penn State, Death Valley, and Kyle Field, all those places get ridiculously loud.
Yeah.
And when you're in offense, like it's like that famous clip of Shea Patterson at Michigan, like first play of the game
Yeah.
in the whiteout having to call a timeout. It's like I think that can happen in all three of those stadiums. So I think those are like very scary places to play. Secondly, is QB danger. Like I think even if you're the home team here, it's like you might not want to play these teams just because this isn't like baseball. I know the World Series is going on, or like basketball or hockey. We got to win a 7-game series. You got to win one game. In one game, a QB can just kind of take over. I think the teams I was thinking of are LSU, Pitt, and Kansas State. I think they all have QBs that might not be great every single game. I know Nussmeier looked really bad last game, but in a one-game match, these guys can take over. Garrett Nussmeier.
Not what I was expecting out of you on that answer.
No, but I'm saying a team coming into your house, LSU with Nussmeier, Pitt with Holstein, and Kansas State with Avery Johnson. I think all those three guys have it in them to have like a very streaky game where everything goes their way.
That's fair. Okay. Once I take a step back, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
and then I also could put
Johnson coming to my house is if I'm Oregon and we get K-State, my stomach's dropping just slightly.
And I almost put him in this category, but I think they're going to get a higher seed. It would be Indiana with Rourke. I think Rourke is a pro. I think he plays great football. He's so efficient. So I think those four teams kind of fall in that pack of one game, a quarter. Like all those teams might be outgunned by a higher seed, like on a talent level. But in a one game, you just have a quarterback takes over, wins the game. What about you?
So I did mine a little bit differently. I envisioned it is the first round is what the first round is. When I proposed the question to you, I'm thinking in my head, you're playing this team in the second round, hypothetically.
Okay.
And which team would you least want to play?
Yeah.
And for what reason, why would you want to not play them? And the few that I came up with, I don't know if they make the playoffs. I don't know if they do or don't. And this is a little bit of loyalty is Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I've seen nothing but improvement out of them. Their defense is averaging 3 to 5 turnovers per game. They're absolutely dominating. Their run game is starting to develop. They have an upfront team. It's not a team. They don't lose at home. So any team that gets them at home, if they make the playoffs, if they get a first round bye, or if they do get, home field advantage, you're statistically improbable of winning. That's a tough place to go to. And that goes for all the big time environments. And that's why I'm so excited about the 12-team playoff is that Notre Dame, Penn State, A&M, Clemson, Ohio State, all unbelievable environments to go in and play in. But yeah, Notre Dame coming to any team, I think they travel really well. I don't think that they would struggle with many teams that are in the top 10 or top 12 right now. I think that is a team that if Oregon got or if Georgia got, they would be remiss in the sense of that's probably one of the least teams that they would want. Secondly is A&M. I think any team with a swarming defense like A&M is a team you don't want to mess with, not a team that you would want coming into your property and really barking up your tree. To piggyback on your defensive style question, when you have a defense that swarms and is as good as A&M's, is Notre Dame's, is Penn State's, it shuts down so many different aspects of the game, right? Like you go 3 and out, 2 in a row, that their defense is now exhausted, right? Because they're constantly on the field, and it is so suffocating in so many different ways. So I think any team that might get, Penn State, A&M, all of those teams might be a bit dreadful. We've seen Boise State obviously challenge Oregon early on in the season. I don't think that was a fluke. I think whatever team gets Boise State in the playoffs is going to be nervous. Rightfully so. I think they're a really good team. They don't have any star players besides Ashton Jeanty, but Madison Maddox, really good player. But I think just as a whole, they're just a really solid team.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you got for your third category, Johnny?
My third category, well, I kind of talked about it was just I think teams solid. teams that are solid, like a little top heavy on one side. I mentioned them in my other two, but it was Clemson and Indiana. I think Clemson's defense travels really well, and I think Indiana's offense. So it's like you just don't want to play a team where like Clemson, you get in a really low scoring battle with them. I think they'll win that game. Indiana, you get in a shootout with them. I think you'll win that game. When we were talking about teams to be afraid of, I tried to stay away from like, the top 5, 6
Yeah.
teams.
No,
because
I agree with you. Like, obviously, everyone's going to be afraid of Oregon, of Georgia, of Texas to some degree. I don't know, to pivot just here slightly. I don't know how afraid I would be of Texas right now.
Yeah, Texas is weird, and I just keep thinking of like who
They
is
haven't looked that impressive in any of their games. And like I think back on Michigan, like in hindsight, Michigan blows. Like that should have been a 28-point game. And it looked like it should have. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, with what teams are doing to Michigan and what I think teams, what Ohio State will do to Michigan and what, all these teams can do, what Oregon's going to do this weekend. Their win just doesn't look all that impressive.
No, we're at this weird point in the season right now, and I agree with that because we're in this weird point in the season where like Texas, Michigan. When we got that week, we're like licking our chops, like this is an amazing game. Now looking back, it's like Michigan's been pretty disappointing this year, very disappointing.
Yeah.
But then like the reverse with like Notre Dame, it's like Notre Dame beats A&M, but like at that point in the season or that early, we were like, is A&M that good? Is Notre Dame that good? But now A&M's trending in the right direction. Now we want to give Notre Dame more props for that. So in this point in the season where you look back, and that's why I think it's a very dangerous game playing the transitive property.
Yes.
It's like,
no,
what
I
does
agree
this
with you
actually mean?
wholeheartedly. And I think that like, we should be looking at what they do almost like on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Or like a monthly evaluation. Like, what do they do in October? That is so impressive. I
And
can't
that's
say
what-
anything that's overly impressive about Texas. But
And
I
that's
can
why,
say
like,
stuff that's overly impressive about Notre Dame and A&M.
I think the monthly thing is such a good take because I've been high in Oregon all season, but nationally, not a lot of people have been as high as they should have been. And it's because that first month of the season, they had a tough game against Boise. They weren't killing teams, and people were like, yeah, maybe they're not that good. Maybe Dylan Gabriel just isn't a good fit there. But if you look at just the second month, this past month have been phenomenal. And it's
Well,
like
it's crazy because that's how short-term memory college football fans and analysts are. Is that let's say in a crazy, crazy, crazy world that the Wolverines beat the Ducks this weekend.
Yeah.
Right. I hope it doesn't happen. Now everyone's saying a couple different things. Is the Labor Day weekend Oregon the true team that we saw, which just isn't the truth, right? It's just a bad week. Is Ohio State terrible for losing to them? And then you just go down the list and you can keep moving and moving and moving. But in reality, like if you look at their last 3 games, they destroyed a really talented Illinois team, a team that brought Penn State to its knees and up until the final 8 minutes. And they destroyed them. It wasn't even close of a game. And then, they dominated OSU, yards per play. I know it was a close score, but, I don't really think anyone thought they were going to win that game, besides the last drive. But, yeah, no, it's interesting. Some teams on the fringe that I would be a little bit nervous to play. Obviously we talked about K-State a little bit. SMU, Army, both 2 teams that I would be a little bit nervous with their offensive attacks. You don't prepare right for Army, and who knows what's going to hit you.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're not lined up properly, if you're not sized up properly, every couple of years these military academies have good years, but this is a better Army team than we see. Army team that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And those are both teams that I would not want to play. Kansas State, we talked about it. Close games, they win. I think they make if they make the playoffs, they make a really good run in the playoffs because I just think they play nitty gritty football. I think that they can dominate the line of scrimmage. I think they can score over you. They can run the read option. Very, very talented. But to summarize what I'm trying to say, 2 teams off the top of my head that I would hate to come into my house and play right now. If I'm the home team, they're the away team. They're coming into me. It's Clemson, Notre Dame, A&M. 3 teams that I would be super nervous for. I wouldn't know what I'm going to get out of them. Johnny, have you ever played tennis with someone who says they're good at tennis, but you don't really know how good they are?
Yeah.
You never know where they're going to hit the ball. You don't
know.
No, you like 100 miles an hour,
like
10 miles an hour. That's kind of what I would expect out of Clemson, Notre Dame, A&M. Like, they're all really good teams. They've showed that. You're also a really good team, but, where do we all stand, right? Everything's a little bit relative until you play each other.
No, 100%. Want to
moving on to this week.
The next Halloween segment, coaches, you should be afraid of the future.
Right, Johnny. You're
Yeah,
right.
can't forget about that. Did too much
Yes.
research.
First one, I gotta get this out there. I'm the biggest hater. I know I've gone back and forth on him. Did you see the news about Lincoln Riley?
No, what was the news?
He kicked media out after the first portion
Oh,
of
I did see
practice.
that. I did see that. That's bad.
Dude's
That's a sign
struggling.
things are not going good.
It's going so bad that everyone's like, "Oh, he's going to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys." Why would they ever mess with him?
No. Why? No, no, no. I don't think he'd be a good fit for the pros either. No, I think he's on his way out. I just think he's been so disappointing since he's gotten to USC. I don't know. I think his contract's so big that the buyout's going to be kind of scary. But at the same time, it's like it's just weird because, like, I don't know, some schools value recruiting way more than other schools, and he's proved to be a very talented recruiter. And at the same time, it's like I just don't think he's going to reach that Oklahoma ceiling at USC like he was doing. I don't think he's like they were making a 14 playoff. I don't think they're ever going to be a top 4 seed, like
No,
especially in this SEC, man. Like I don't know.
no,
Even this isn't
no.
wait, no, sorry, Big Ten. Though I had Oklahoma on the brain. I don't know. This Big
Yeah,
Ten,
no. And speaking of Oklahoma, another team I know he just signed a big contract. I think in early September. Brett Venables has got to be pretty nervous. His buyout, I think, is $45 million. And if I'm the big boosters who have all that farm money out in Oklahoma, I'm certainly considering it.
no,
He
I
has
put
no offensive identity, and we've talked about it a lot. No offensive identity. They're losing massive games. You know, getting curb stomped in the Red River Showdown, first big one in the SEC. It's not just about what you do in a season, Johnny. It's where do you see the program going? And
yeah.
you look at a couple of teams, and everyone was like, Billy Napier's first coach to get fired. He's undefeated against unranked teams.
Yeah.
Yes, you can still be upset at a record, but you have to say, he is performing against unranked teams. Something that you can't say about Oklahoma. You can say that, like, let's say hypothetically, Florida has the same easy ass schedule that Mizzou has, that they're not outperforming Mizzou. You know what I mean? This is a legendarily hard schedule for Florida. And that's kind of what I'm getting is that everyone was barking up the tree of Bailey Napier saying he's got to be nervous. He's got to be nervous. He's actually outperforming his expectations. But Brett Venables' expectations are killer. Brett Venables is underperforming his expectations tenfold.
I think he's in this category of guys that should like if you just look at it just from like where they trending should be fired but won't be fired. Like I think him, Gus Malzahn, and Hugh Freeze are both 3 coaches where like because of the contracts they have right now. I know Gus has been there a while, but I'm saying like Hugh Freeze, kind of a recent hire, and Brent Venables. Like where's Auburn and Oklahoma trending? Bad directions. I say it week in and week out on this podcast, but Brent Venables has single-handedly ruined Oklahoma's offense, and maybe the defense has gotten a little better, but that ceiling right now is like mediocre.
Yeah.
And that's not what Oklahoma football is, especially they're going to get eaten alive in the SEC. And like the SEC is kind of down, and I say it with quotations.
Yeah, I know. I would agree with you. I feel like there is a subtle downness to
but
that.
in that down year, they're still underperforming.
Yes.
And then at Hugh Freeze, it's like, I don't even know what Auburn's doing right now.
Auburn's in a tough situation. If you're having a terrible year, you got to be able to recruit. And that's where it gets really, really hard. It's so much easier, just like going to practice on those Wednesdays and, you have 4 thuds and 9 individual periods. When you're 1-6, there is nothing you'd rather do than not go to practice. But when you're 6-0, you're jazzed the hell up to get out in the field and get better. And the same thing goes with it. It's so much easier to go out to practice when you're 6-0, just like it's so much easier to recruit when you're 6-0 versus 1-6.
100%.
And, where I'm going with that is that if these coaches are able to recruit when they're down, they're going to be just fine. If Lincoln Riley can somehow, some way get a top-end quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, a better O-line, better D-line, he will have no problem staying there. I don't see a world in which these high-end recruits are still picking Oklahoma, where they're still picking Auburn, where they're still picking Florida's iffy. I think Florida has the upper leg, still somehow, some way has an upper leg on recruiting over the 3 that I just said. But like you said for UCF, excuse me, they're not out recruiting anyone in their conference. They're not performing great in Florida. They're not doing any of that stuff. And it's hard to look at that and say, I like the path that the program's going to justify, keeping these guys.
Yeah. And I know you just said you don't think you think he's in a safer spot than people projected, but to go back to Billy Napier, I still think he's going to get gunned after this year. I think we talked about it before, and the end of his schedule right now is Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, FSU. You told me you think he has to win 2 games, and I agree with that. I
Yep.
think if he wins 2 games, he's fine. The problem is I don't think he's going to win 2 games.
You
I
don't think
don't think he's
he surprises you? Bringing Tennessee to overtime wasn't enough convincing that he couldn't beat Ole Miss at home.
No, I don't think so. I just don't think they're that good. I don't even I think they're gonna struggle with FSU. I think that's like a weird no, but I think it's no, listen to me.
No, knock
Listen
it
to
off,
me.
Johnny.
No, listen to me.
Mix in the water, dude.
No, listen to me. He loses to Georgia and Texas. He loses to LSU.
Yep.
And then if he
Which
loses
hold on. After what LSU showed us, you're going to confidently say that you're looking.
I am.
Imagine the difference in opinion that you would have right now if they beat Tennessee when they had a chance. Or if they
We just
lost.
spent
They
like
lost.
we just
They
spent like
lost.
5 minutes.
They lost to A&M in the fourth quarter. By the way,
I know, but
they
all I'm
were the favorite in that game for reference. They lost in the fourth quarter. Imagine if, and you and I just talked about this about 17 minutes ago. Imagine if Florida somehow, some way won that game. This conversation is not happening. And
no,
I
I
know you
know,
can't say that, right? Like if
but it didn't.
I'm not going to make that joke, but if they won the game, it would be a whole different story. And we would be saying, they're outperforming expectations. They're outperforming their talent levels. We actually like what they're doing in Florida. It's just because they lost these 2 games because they have those ticks on that schedule. We're now saying that they stink and they're going to lose to Florida State.
Yeah, but this is the Florida Gators patches. We can't be talking about beating unranked teams, and that's the goal. Like this is Florida.
No, trust me, I get that.
It's
I
a
just don't think
huge program.
Indy is as hot as people are making it out to be.
No, but I'm just saying this. I think momentum's a very real thing, and
Very much so,
especially in college football. You lose to Georgia, Texas. Maybe you think they can beat LSU. Maybe they can. They lose to LSU. That's 3 in a row. You lose to Lane Kiffin, which I think is a much more talented team. 4 in a row. They should beat the brakes off FSU, and I'm going to emphasize that they should beat the brakes off
Sure.
FSU.
Yeah.
But you lose 4 games in a row, last game of the season. You got guys opting out for the NFL draft and stuff. I think that's a tough game to get the guys up for. And FSU is going to be starving. But at the same time, another guy I have on this list is Mike Norvell. I don't think he'll get fired just because of how good he was in the past. But man,
was he that good though, dude? 2 years ago, not last year, not the year before, 3 years ago, he had a 500 record.
I know, but the thing is,
like,
I don't
you
know.
They were
Undefeated.
he had a really good year, but just because Ed Orgeron had 2019 LSU doesn't make him an unbelievable coach.
No, that's a good take. That's a take.
I find it so hard to believe if I'm an AD and I'm sitting at this peak, right? FSU is so back, right? It's 2013. We're better than them. We don't make the playoffs. We get cursed on by Georgia. All our players opted out. It is what it is. Then you come back and win 1 game, right? They have 1 win right now or 2?
Who?
FSU.
FSU's got 1 win.
1 win. And hypothetically, I don't know if they get another this rest of the year.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know.
The highs and lows of those 2 is enough to make you feel sick to your stomach. It's almost like when you're at a casino, Johnny, and you go up $800. You go to the roulette wheel and somehow you lose the 800 and then an additional 500. It feels worse than if you just went to the roulette table at first and lost 500.
100%, yeah.
That's kind of where I'm going. I 100% think if he only wins 1 game all year, he gets shit canned. I don't see why the AD would make anything else. He's not that good of a coach. FSU is such an elite place to play, just like Florida, just like Auburn, just like Oklahoma. You would get a great coaching list of people who want to coach FSU. The applicants that would be reaching out there would be some top names.
I had a weird hypothetical. If they fire Norvell, do they give Jimbo a ring? Won a national championship there. I know they had Jameis. He's a good recruiter. You can say what you want about him actually coaching. But if they fired Norvell, do you give Jimbo a ring?
Wait, are they not giving Jimbo a ring because of Mike Norvell?
No, I'm saying like a call. Do you give him a call?
Oh, gotcha. Okay. No. I think that on that list, Dan Mullen, Nick Saban.
To Dan Mullen getting fired from Florida and then going to Florida State would be.
If you watch him as an analyst, he seems salty. Even this far down the line, he seems salty. And You know,
I think
I wanted to play
understandably
this one
so.
hypothetical before we hit the final segment, Johnny.
Damn it, I had one more.
All right, you go first, and I want to say my hypothetical.
Okay, I like these are two coaches I think could get fired this year, so I wanted to know going forward, who would you rather have? Mark Stoops, who's 3-4 right now at Kentucky. You know, he's
Yeah.
had some pretty good seasons at Kentucky
Yes.
right now, but they're 3 straight losses to UF, the Florida, Auburn, and Vandy, or Sam Pittman. Who would you rather have going forward if you were the AD hired today? Mark Stoops or Sam Pittman?
Mark Stoops.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
I think that the only success that Arkansas has is because of Petrino and that talented quarterback. I don't think any of it really has to do with Sammy Pittman.
The Stoops thing's crazy because
He was
he was
A&M's
gonna
head
get
coach.
he was gonna get hired by A&M.
Yeah.
And then the fans were like, "No, don't touch Mark Stoops."
Yeah,
And
and
now he's having
then legitimately $1 billion came in and was like, "Yeah, don't do it." And they were like, "Yep, sorry."
but now he's having a bad season at Kentucky. Just crazy. Like if that never happened, like what could have been Mike Elko at Duke? Like I don't know. Like it's just a weird. It's like a weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like tables turned. Okay, now you're hypothetical.
Really quick. So we
Yeah.
have some pretty elite coaches that are out in the world, right? We have Urban.
Yep.
We have Nick Saban.
Yep.
I want to throw Dan Mullen on there just because I think that would be fun. And Urban, Nick Saban, Dan Mullen, and Jimbo are, let's say, these hypothetical programs. And I want to start with the two big ones, right? We have Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. What needs to happen for either of these coaches to come out of retirement? Nick Saban has openly said that he will never coach another team. He's going to, be an Alabama guy forever. I want to just list a couple schools. You tell me if Nick Saban's even answering the call. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Florida. Is Nick Saban answering that call?
No. I don't think Nick Saban's ever going to coach again. I do see Mullen.
You don't think like Ohio State opens up, really good opportunity, Nick Saban's not answering the call for $40 million a year?
No, I think Mullen
for 3 years.
I think Mullen and Jimbo are way more likely to coach than the other two guys.
I agree. I think that Urban's short list would be Notre Dame at number 1.
Yep.
And then I think the next one would be, this one you're not going to believe, I think would be either Texas, the Longhorns, or it would be LSU.
No, LSU, both those programs, like I think if we're talking Jimbo and Mullen, both would take those. I don't know. I think Saban's almost too old where like I don't think he wants to put up with the NIL and the transfer portal and stuff like that.
But Urban is just waiting for the right opportunity. I know that for
weird because he's like an insanely cocky dude. So I totally can see him being like, he just gets bored. It's like, I'm a good coach. I can do it again. I can run it back.
So who is he saying yes to?
I think it's Notre Dame. I think, is that always been his dream? That's always what the rumors have been. It's Notre Dame. Mullen and Jimbo, though, I think what are the ones you just said? You just said Texas and LSU, both LSU. Answering those. I don't think Mullen, you could pay him enough money to go back to Florida.
No, I don't think so either. I heard that LSU offered Jimbo like something. You remember that crazy year where Mel Tucker got like $9 million a year?
Yeah.
Like all those coaches got crazy money. I heard that year that they hired Brian Kelly down at LSU, they offered Jimbo like $19 million a year.
Where is Mel Tucker? That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, it took me a little bit of brain strength to remember that game.
Not coaching, yeah.
That name, excuse me.
A weird end to that. We don't need to get into that.
Yeah, no, we'll keep that one off the pod. All right, Johnny, going into this week's games, I want to save one in particular for last. I know you know what game I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let you take the floor on that one, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. First one we have is Ole Miss is playing Arkansas at Arkansas. Arkansas is a 7-point underdog.
I'm going to take Arkansas to cover. I don't know if they'll win the game. I think 7's a lot. Ole Miss has looked disappointing the past couple of weeks, and Arkansas is like, they just played this like, they played suffocating football, especially up front.
Yeah.
And like,
a team that can run like Arkansas is not a team I want to flirt with.
No, and like they had that win against Tennessee. Like I think you just kind of get like a dogfight with them. I don't think Ole Miss is a very tough team. I think Arkansas at home. I don't know if they'll win this game, but I think a touchdown's a lot. I think I'd put the line more like 3.5.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think maybe 5, but I think Arkansas gets within a field goal for that game. We
Yeah,
have Minnesota at Illinois. I wanted to include this one because our friend Max Bosmer is playing really, really well. Had 3 touchdowns, 360 yards last
been
week.
awesome. Been awesome.
Awesome to see. We all knew that he would take off. It would just take a little bit. Illinois, textbook buy low, sell high type situation. We're buying them low because they just got smoked by Oregon. I don't think that's indicative of them as a team. You're right. You look at what they did to Michigan. You look at what they didn't win against Penn State, but played them very, very competitively. Was a
Yeah.
few plays away from winning that game. They're an underdog at home.
Yeah, no, I think that's a little disrespectful. I know, I love Brosman's been playing great, especially the past couple of games. I think Minnesota is definitely trending in the right direction, but I do think people are sleeping a little bit on Illinois based on that. I've been high on Luke Altmaier all season. He doesn't really turn the ball over. He plays great football. And, one of my like 3.5 point picks in the Cheesecake Factory bet was Illinois at home against Michigan. They were underdogs
The
in that.
easiest money I've ever seen, dude. We should have bet our mortgage payments on it.
I know, and because of that, I gotta take Illinois again at home. I just think I feel like it's at Minnesota, it's a little different, but, I think the 24th ranked team in the country, Illinois at home, I'm gonna have to go with
Yeah,
that.
I think 24 might be even a little bit low. I think they're a really good team. They have 2 losses, both to the
Good
number 1
teams.
and the number 3 team in the
Yeah,
nation.
yeah,
Yeah, number
what?
1 and number 3 team in the nation.
100%, yeah.
And you're barely in the top 25. Explain that to me.
No,
Right?
and
They beat a
Ole
really tough
Miss is
Kansas
above
team.
you?
They've beaten some really good Big Ten teams. I don't understand that 3-point underdog. Johnny, if you're willing to put half of your rent and half of my rent in together, we could talk about that. But I do think that that's a really good bet. I don't throw the word lock around a lot. But, for this next game, I might throw lock around. We have Vanderbilt is at Auburn. Auburn is a 7-point favorite.
Yeah, it's
For the life of
crazy.
me, this one's so fishy that I won't bet it. But every
22
fiber,
points.
every cell, every molecule in my body is saying Vanderbilt is winning this outright. Spoiler alert, they are my Cheesecake Factory pick of the week. They should have beat Texas last week. That's not a notch on their schedule or their team. Losing to Texas, a really good team. I think that they should have beat Texas. They're certainly going to beat Auburn. Auburn is going in the wrong direction. Vanderbilt and Clark Leah, a coach that you had on your quick fire list at the beginning of the year, has got those what are they? The camaraderies?
The Commodores, right?
Commodores, yes.
It's like a Navy term.
Commodores rolling. I think that Vanderbilt not only covers but wins the game, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Vanderbilt too. It kind of hurts you pick that for your pick of the week because I think that's a really good
I
one.
had a feeling you were thinking about it, so I had to jump on it quickly. That's why I kind of stormed that field.
I just don't get why. I just don't get the line, which it does make me like betting wise, like what? I don't know.
I would be more peculiar if it was Auburn -2 or 3. Then I'd be like, there's something I'm missing. But -7 just makes no sense to me.
No sense.
We have Oregon is at Michigan. Oregon's, I'm not going to say it's their first big, obviously not their first big test in the Big Ten, but they are playing a Big Ten team, the iconic Michigan, in the sense of like this is a tough game because they've never played Michigan in this type of scenario, but it's not going to be a tough game in terms of talent and competition. They're going to blow Michigan out. I don't think they get intimidated by the Wolverines at all. I don't think they get intimidated by the Big House. When I saw this, I thought the line should be closer to 19, if not 22.
I think 15 is not enough. Tuttle just retired from Michigan.
Was he the starting quarterback, or did they subbed him out? Not.
I can't even tell. They've had like 70 different starting quarterbacks this season. I don't think it matters who's starting at quarterback for them. I feel bad that he's medically retired, but Orgy can't
I don't
do it.
feel
The other
that
guy
bad. I didn't even know he went down for an injury, and then you just literally hang up the cleats and you do this sappy Instagram post. Like, God, give me a break. Like, you're a Division I college football player.
Yeah.
Toughen it out. Tighten your helmet up or get a better helmet. I don't understand that. Like, middle of it retiring. Like, worst comes to worst. Like, I don't know. Rotate in on special teams. Do something. Like, you are straight up just leaving your team high and dry.
No, it was a weird move. That being said, I'm hammering Oregon. Like, I just think it's too many points. I think that offense is absolutely buzzing right now. I know the Big House, largest stadium in North America, but I don't care. Michigan's been pathetic all season. The defense is individually very talented, but as a unit has struggled big time this year. And I just really don't think they're going to be able to slow down Dylan Gabriel. And then I think Oregon's defense, because of how good Oregon's offense is, Oregon's defense really getting slept on up front. Birch,
Yeah, they're not a one-dimensional team.
no, Birch and Harmon, especially when Birch is healthy. He's been banged up this season, but Harmon's a freaking animal.
Was he leading the nation in sacks at one point
Q-
before he got hurt?
Yeah, and then but Harmon I think is leading the nation in D-line QB pressures. Like they're both really good. And then DJ Uegalege's brother Mateo is playing phenomenal. So I think that's a great.
He's absolutely stout. I don't see a scenario in which that game is remotely close.
No.
Oregon's not in a look-ahead spot. That line does not make a whole lot of sense. The next one I think is I only included it. I don't think it's going to be a great game, but I did include it because I think we'll be able to see a lot about each of these teams. One of which is the Georgia Bulldogs. The other one is the Florida Gators. Georgia is at home, 16.5. And you're probably thinking out loud, Johnny, like, why even include this game? It's a massive spread. It has really no implications. Georgia's going to win this game. The reason I want to include it is Georgia played arguably their best game against Texas last time we saw them. I want to know if they still got that in them or if that was a one-time thing.
16.5 is so many points, but I'm going to kick myself if I don't pick Georgia. I think they struggled early in the season, especially against like Kentucky and Bama because their defense is so banged up. Their defense is fully healthy right now, and they're just swarming to the ball. I think offensively, Carson Beck, they won big last week, and Carson Beck played really bad. I think he's going to hear that a little bit. And I think they're going to come out firing. He's going to play a really good game, maybe his best game of the season. So I'm going to take Georgia.
Got to be able to run the ball. That's their biggest problem. They cannot run the ball if their life's dependent on it. I'm going to take Florida just because, one, I want to be separate from you, and two, I think that's a lot of points. I'm hoping that Florida keeps this close. I think if we get any semblance of that Texas game, Georgia's going to beat them by 28 plus, or even the Clemson game, or even the second half of Bama. I think that they are arguably one of the best teams in the nation. No one's doubting that. I think they go toe-to-toe with Oregon. But I think they're a really good team. But I'm simply picking Florida just because I think I can get a one leg up on you just because of how many points there are.
Sounds good.
We have the Texas A&M Aggies minus 2.5 at South Carolina. Huge letdown spot heading down to the Gamecocks, a team that's very nitty-gritty that brought LSU to their knees. LSU won on a bad passing interference call a couple weeks ago. This USC team is not a team I would want to mess with. Arguably, if they didn't have as many losses, it'd be one of the teams that we will talk about in our scary section of our Halloween portion. With that being said, I'm hoping A&M gets through this. It's one of those games where they win by 1, if they win by 6, if they win by 10, I don't care. You got to get the W here.
Yeah, and I think so many people right now nationally are so high on this USC upset that I'm going to take A&M. I think I totally respect USC as a defense, especially up front. They've got a very talented defense. They've got guys that are going to be playing on Sundays.
The dude's like 17 years old. He has like 11 sacks and 40 hurries. It's disgusting.
He's so scary. And like they've got a lot of
long.
They've got
flexible.
They've got so many guys on defense that will play in the league. But that being said, I think Texas A&M's come off a very emotional win. I don't know who's going to start as quarterback. I think Reed, just because how he took over last week. But I think also on defense they're really good. So I think Texas A&M goes in and gets a dub.
Yeah, no, I think that it's obviously a must win. If you have any chance at being a national contender, you got to be able to play 2 weeks in a row. It's just the way to go. Another game where I have watched these teams each play once. They're both early on in the year. I don't know how I feel about them. They're both in the top 25. We have Pitt at SMU. SMU is a 7.5-point favorite. Eventually, you got to stop undervaluing Pitt in who they are as an individual.
Wait,
I think you and I watched the Syracuse game, and I don't know what that game would have been like if they didn't have 3 pick sixes.
Wait, did you say no? I think did you say Pitt's favorite? I think SMU's favorite.
Yeah, no, I said that SMU is minus 7.5 at home.
Oh yeah, okay, good, because this is my Cheesecake Factory pick of the week. Pitt, I'm riding Pitt hard. I think Holstein is a very great quarterback. I think he's one of those guys that he's he's a freshman. I think in a couple of years. We'll be looking at him at the top of the QB board for potential draft picks. I think they go into SMU and get the win. I think they're just a grittier team than SMU. I think SMU is still a good football team. Yeah. I think they're a little too hot and cold. I think they should have lost last week to Duke. So I'm going to take Pitt.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Pitt doesn't win the game, this one's so tough. I would not be surprised if Pitt wins the game. I would not be surprised if they cover it. I'm going to take Pitt because I think they cover that 7.5. That's way too many points. I really would love to see Pitt make a run in the ACC and throw some serious wrenches in the ACC playoff picture. And they're not going to do that unless they beat SMU. And I have a ideology about teams that are able to win when they have to, because they know that that's what's standing in between them and an ACC championship, what's standing between them in the playoffs, right? I said this last year when FSU opened up with LSU. If you looked at FSU's entire schedule, you say to yourself, they have LSU and then the ACC, which was garbage last year. In their heads, they're thinking, we got to get through this little lump, and then we are coasting.
Yeah.
It's like when you're running a 5K, Johnny. You ever run one of those? When
No,
you get
never.
to the top of the hill. Once I get past that hill, I'm golden.
Yeah.
But getting past that hill is the hardest part. And that's why I think Pitt is at the situation. I think A&M's in the same situation. The next one, I'm not going to say anything on this game besides my pick. We have Penn State is hosting Ohio State. James Franklin is 1-12 against Ohio State in these situations. Big noon kickoff. This is the best Penn State team we've seen in many, many years, right?
Yeah,
this was on paper the best Ohio State team that we've ever seen, or not ever seen, but seen in many, many years. They are wildly underperforming. Are you at all concerned, before we get into your picks, are you at all concerned that people are selling Ohio State too quickly because of that game against Nebraska and buying into Penn State too quickly because of their couple good wins in a row?
No, I don't care about people jumping on the bandwagon. There's plenty of room here. I've been on it all year. I'll make.
You are a bandwagon jumper, just so you know. So
I'm not. First of all, I've been on.
This is the first time I've ever heard you talk about Penn State. By the way,
this is crazy. I was actually surprised when you started this segment off by saying I wasn't going to say anything, because you've had so much to say about Penn State in every single episode of this season.
I am nervous, right? Ohio State was my big winner. I had them winning the Big Ten in one of my parlays. I am very nervous at this, because I'm going to speak absolutely crazy here, Johnny. Ohio State is kind of in a tough position. Everyone's like, oh, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. Dude, they lose to Penn State. They are out of the Big Ten playoff race.
Yeah.
Big Ten champion race.
Yeah.
Then what happens if it's a gritty fight against Indiana? A 3-loss Ohio State team gets Ryan Day fired, could possibly miss the playoffs. Right? Like, imagine that. You spend $12 million on your roster alone. You drop a really tough game at Penn State, really tough game at Oregon, and then a surprising loss to Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers.
Yeah, you're in a tough spot.
Oh, I'm nervous as all hell. That's why I haven't said anything. Because I truly think that this is Penn State's year.
I think I'm really high on Penn State. But no disrespect to Ohio State, because I'm not sleeping in the middle. I think both these teams are really, really good. And the thing is that it's going to come down to the QB battle is one of the things that I really starred next to this game. Is Drew Aller playing? James Franklin all week's been saying a game time decision. That leads me to believe he is going to play. At the same time, I really liked what I saw to Beau Pribula. He's a guy that if you're a Penn State fan, if you've been watching Penn State football, you're not unfamiliar to him. He comes in they put in packages for him to play every week. He's more like the Penn State quarterbacks we're used to seeing with like Trace McSorley, Sean Clifford, where they kind of do some stuff with their feet. That's Beau Pribula. At the same time, I think the biggest battle this game is going to come down to is Penn State's D-line versus Ohio State's D-line.
And they have a huge one-up on that. Huge.
I know, because Ohio State lost their left tackle, 2 weeks ago, and last week they lost their backup left tackle. And that's real. And they have two of the best running backs in the nation. But because of this O-line, there's not as much depth as they thought they had at O-line. Is like they're really struggling to run the ball. And Penn State's D-line can get after the quarterback, can get after your running backs. Abdul Card is going to be playing. He's going to be like a top 15 pick next year. And I think, if Danny Dennis Sutton's healthy, he's kind of banged up right now. If Zane Durant's he's healthy, I think Penn State's D-line is very, very good. So it's going to come down to, can Ohio State can they run the ball? Because it doesn't matter how much wide receiver depth they have. If they can't run the ball, Will Howard's going to struggle, and he has struggled the past couple of weeks.
The interesting part about Ohio State is, like, when people hear the term, Johnny, oh, can they run the ball? Everyone assumes 30 carries for 230 yards. When that's just not the case.
No.
If a team cannot run the ball, what it looks like in reality is it's 3rd and 4, and the only option you have is out routes, screen plays, check downs, or cross routes. No matter what you do, you're not getting the first down if you hand the ball to a running back. That's what not being able to run the ball looks like. And when you do that, you get big DTs off the field. You get your nickel packages. You get an extra defensive back in there to cover these elite wide receivers. Running the ball on first and second down is uber important. Running the ball in general is very, very important. It's somewhere that Georgia's struggling, and it's something that we haven't seen out of Georgia in a while. It's mind-boggling that Ohio State is struggling with it currently.
Yeah, no, especially with the
no
two
sense
running
that
backs.
struggling with it with Chip Kelly. These two great running backs should open up these wide receivers, and that's why we're seeing Ohio State struggle so darn much. Is they cannot run the ball behind these terrible offensive linemen.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. Like, I really think this is James Franklin's best Penn State team, top to bottom, and I think just there's talent up front on defense and in the middle of that defense, like the linebacker. It's gonna be really hard to run the ball. And Will Howard's the type of guy where like everything needs to be perfect for him to succeed. And I think if they can't run the ball, he's not going to have a lot of time in the pocket, and they're really going to struggle. And that's why I'm taking Penn State this week at home. That place is going to be freaking rocking. And I think
that game should be at 7:00 tonight.
It's Fox. It's Fox owns the big noon kickoff, and they're making a big noon kickoff, or else it'll be a night game.
They would create like a new plate tectonic. It would be so loud.
It'd be crazy.
Happy Valley.
But still, I'm taking Penn State. They're going to win this game.
Yeah, I have to politely disagree simply because I think Ohio State Buckeyes still have a lot of juice left in the tank. Because I think that they are a really good team. I think that they are a top 3 team. They're people are quick to sell them. They're going to be I think that this Ohio State team is very similar to the 2020 team where they went 6-0, or even the 2022 team where they went 6-0 during the COVID year, surprised everyone, dominated Clemson in the playoffs. Everyone's like, they haven't played anyone because all the COVID games they canceled. Dominated Clemson in the playoff, lost to Bama in the championship, or in 2022, where everyone's like, they shouldn't be in the playoffs, and Utah beat USC to take that 4th spot. To give Ohio State that 4th spot, and they went toe-to-toe with Georgia. I think that this Ohio State team's got that type of grit to them where they're going to be able to pull out these wins very, very close, and they're going to still end up winning a lot of games this year. I do agree with you that Will Howard is not going to perform well, and his whole douchey stunt of, Penn State didn't recruit me. Have you seen that, Johnny?
Yeah, no, that was crazy because it's
dude, you stink.
You
went to Kansas State when Kansas State wasn't even good.
No, that's a thing which is like kind of annoying.
I hate that like revenge tour bullshit that these players try to pull. It's like, dude, you're not like this player who can flip a switch and go for 260 yards rushing, or flip a switch and go for 3 touchdowns, 3 receptions type play.
But it's also annoying because it's like Ohio State didn't even want you out of high school. Like the school you're playing at didn't want you. So to say that about Penn State's crazy. Yeah. One last thing I want to say about this game is I think that's going to be a big deal is I think Ohio State has a lot of elite pass rushers, but I don't think they're committed to stopping the run. And Penn State runs the hell out of the ball and has a good offensive line.
I don't think Chip Kelly will keep up with, what was it, Andrew Stokanecki?
Andy Koltanicki.
What is it again?
Koltanicki.
I think that his plays against USC were so exciting that he's going to pull some crazy stuff that we haven't seen in many, many years against Ohio State. They have had this game circled. With that being said, I got to pick Ohio State. No disrespect to you. I hope you're the best. This is going to be a great game. Someone has to lose. Someone has to win.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not going to be upset.
We are.
But yeah, awesome week of college football, Johnny. We're coming up near the end of the season. Some serious implications. We will keep everyone updated this weekend, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks. You too.